going on behind you there, man?
It's a volcano. It's a volcano. So I'm
Awesome.
it's very dangerous here, but you know, the call was so important that I wanted to make sure I was here. So I might have to dodge some lava, but I'm here for the call.
Should be a politician. I'd vote for you based on that.
I just thought it was the flaming MRI you just got out of.
Man. Phew. I had to
just
go
thought he was at
back.
my mother-in-law's house.
You had to go back?
Yeah, I left there and they called me on the phone. They're like, we made a mistake. Can you come back and do it again? I was like, yeah, okay. I'll come back and do it again.
Yeah, okay.
Oh. For those of y'all that don't know, that's Boone Cutler. I'm Stacy. Me and Jeremy and Carl formed Loving Our Veteran. And we are a support group for veterans and their spouses because we think that's the missing link is the spouses and the partners don't understand what it's like to walk in their shoes. And they don't know what it's like to walk in our shoes. And it came about at over ice cream one day. So that's just kind of the brief of how we got started. So we do this every Thursday night where we bring everybody together. So if like a spouse is having a problem and maybe her husband doesn't want to come on, a veteran can answer it rather than me because I don't know what's in y'all's head. I mean, I have my own issues.
And sometimes I don't want to know what's in ours either.
My good friend, Jenny Lutz, who I just think is like the sun rises and sets on her because anybody who's been through the tragedy she's been through and wants to fight for our war fighters is like, you need just, Boone is it. And her book too came out. So I just ordered it. It'll be here tomorrow. But we're really talking about Boone's book, FPL, which I love. Carl says it's my new addition to my Bible, Boone.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Good.
I refer to it on a regular basis, and my only suggestion is next time you need to make a few more lines for notes because I've written all through mine and it looks like a strange road map.
Good.
So he's going to talk about what he's been through and allow us to ask questions. So I think with so many people, it's probably smarter if we mute ourselves. We'll use the chat and we'll watch the chat. And if you got a question, raise your hand, ask Boone, stop in the middle, whatever we need to do.
Oh, hey, Robin.
That way we can kind of get everybody in. All right, Mr. Cutler, it's all you.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. This is the first time I've done a Zoom call specifically about the book. And I was talking to my literary agent. I said, I think I want to have, instead of doing shows all the time, I think I would like to just do like a one big Zoom call. And that way it's like doing a show, except you got the feedback from everybody. I think that's going to be more effective. It's definitely more personable and gives me the opportunity to really talk to people who've read the book and have that discussion. And for those that have not had the discussion because they haven't read the book yet, FPL stands for, well, in the military, we know it stands for Final Protective Line. And a final protective line, for those that don't know, is if you're like in a defensive perimeter and everybody's kind of facing out and you're just waiting, you're in a patrol base or an assembly area or objective rally point, something like that. Primarily, these things advance. They start out as an alpha, then a patrol base, and then so on and so forth. But if the shit hits the fan, excuse my French. If the shit hits the fan, everybody goes to their FPL, and their final protective line just means you basically push your weapon to one side and just lay on it. And by doing so, it creates this wall of lead around your perimeter, so you can defend your perimeter. And the final protective line is just that. It's the final protective line. It means the shit has hit the fan, and this is what we need to do to survive. The play on words, obviously, with the book is functional lifestyle fitness, FPL, functional personal lifestyle. Sorry, TV, I had that. Functional personalized lifestyle. And the purpose of that is for the same thing. It's what to do it's what we can do within our own control to take control of our lives, to take control of the health issues, military service. And I wrote 2 books this last year. One was Call Sign Voodoo, and the other one is FPL. And Call Sign Voodoo is about my tour in Iraq, is about my 2 years at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, and all that encompassed and how that was in many ways not so great. And then FPL comes along, and it's all the things that I've done, that I've had the blessings to be able to have access to certain modalities and certain treatments that a lot of people either they don't know enough about, they're concerned, they're scared, they have their own stigmas, money. There's a lot of different reasons people don't try different things that are outside the VA system. And I was never, I tried the VA system. I tried the military medical. I did all that stuff. You know, I was at Walter Reed for 2 years, and then I was in the VA system for another couple of years. And the only thing it really did for me is give me a lot of drugs. And I know that that kind of stuff has changed and is continuing to change. But at the time, that was the story. That was how things were done. And what I learned from it, primarily, the most I learned from it was that we're treating brain damage with psych meds. And I think I couldn't be more against that. I think treating brain damage with psych meds is a recipe for disaster. For one, the chemistry is different because you have the brain damage, you have the TBI. For two, it's just not the same thing. I mean, when you're talking about, I mean, brain damage is basically shell shock. Why would you be using psych meds for such a thing? And it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I've been blessed enough to find a couple things that do work and that work very well. So that's the story of FPL. It's basically the story of the stuff I've went through when my heart gave out, when I was having cognitive issues, when I'm having nightmares, when I'm having what else is in there? Suicidal ideation was a big deal. I talk about suicidal ideation a lot in the book. I talk about chronic pain a lot in the book, and I talk about the things that did not work, and I talk about the things that did work. And hopefully the point of the book is to show everybody that I've been through all these things and I've created my own functional personal lifestyle, and to encourage other people to do the same thing and to at least consider some of these other modalities, some of these other treatments that they either don't know of or haven't had access to. Let me ask you, Stacy, what was the thing about the book that stuck out to you that makes it different than others? I'm sure you've read and heard a lot of stuff. What makes this one just kind of click?
Because first of all, my background is as a paramedic. And so 15 years, I've been a paramedic for 20 years. 15 years ago, who's now my ex-husband and I were instrumental in Georgia in getting mental health patients, PTSD, et cetera, transported by ambulance instead of like criminals, because I think that's a stigma. My biggest thing is that after talking to veterans going through this, there's two things in your book that really stuck out to me. The very first thing is my paramedic instructor told me day one that you can only die from hypoxia. And if you fix hypoxia, you won't die. And when you're 0.53, it says hypoxia kills. And I thought that was so relevant to me.
Spot on.
But the other thing was the combat cocktail and the zombie drugs. And coming from the medical background, you know, there are only 2 drugs that are approved by the FDA to treat PTSD. One of which is Zoloft and the other is Paxil. That's it. And so when you start looking at the other drugs that are being thrown at veterans, it's like PTSD just becomes the blanket answer and they don't look any further. So now you're mixing drugs that don't go together. You're treating side effects upon side effects. Every one of the drugs that they're throwing at these people, suicide and hallucinations and agitation are all side effects. And I think that's what stuck out the most to me. And the fact that there are alternatives to these. Because my biggest thing, and this is why we're such advocates, are we're blessed that this group has spouses and veterans. But what about all these veterans that don't have an advocate? That's
a big deal. Yeah, that's a huge deal. And you'll see in the book that I talk probably more about the importance of having a caregiver than I talk about any one topic. If you have traumatic brain injury, you need a caregiver. It's just the way it is, because you're running uphill in the dark all the time if you don't. Because just being able to take relevant and accurate information to and from a doctor when you have your doctor's appointments and then being able to execute your working with your doctor to create a plan and then executing that plan. If you're dealing with traumatic brain injury, I'm just here to tell you guys, you're not getting it right. You're just not. You're not getting it right. If you
That's an
don't
uphill
have,
battle the whole time.
it's an uphill battle the whole time. And if you don't have someone who is like I can do a lot of things. I'm very, very capable, talking about traumatic brain injury. There's a show out right now. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I think it's on Netflix. It's called Patriot or The Patriot. And it's not the Mel Gibson movie. It's a series about this. Yeah, it's a series about this case agent or case officer that's working overseas, and he's doing all this stuff. And in one of the scenes is he has to get this job, for his cover. And the guy who's going to get the job is just kicking his ass. And so what's he do? He pushes him in front of a truck, and he just goes right down. But and then this guy comes back, he comes back, and he's got like a occupational therapist with him that's supposed to help reintegrate him back into his job. And the occupational therapist says, whatever guy's name is, Jimmy, Bobby, whatever, he says, or she says, he's very capable. He can still do very high levels of math. He's very smart. However, he might not be able to figure out how to turn the computer on. And that is just so relevant when it comes to TBI. I'm a very capable guy. I stand up in front of people. I talk, I do speeches, I do all this stuff. But as far as me managing my own care, I can do that for about a week before it goes sideways. If I leave town, I can't leave town for any more than 72 hours unless my wife is with me, because something's going to go sideways and then I can't get myself out of it. All these things happen. And now I want to be a, big tough, strong guy and say, I can handle it on my own. And I can, to a certain point, and then it starts to slip. And then once it slips, it starts to slip more and then more and then more. And then before you know it, it's just a series of hospitalizations and more problems, because I didn't have that check, that's someone going who actually does my pills for me. I know it sounds very sophomoric and childish, but my wife doing, setting out my medications for me and what I'm supposed to take and when is a huge deal. My wife making sure I turned off the stove before, if I was cooking something, is a huge deal. And these are just little things that get missed, and you'll swear to God you don't miss it. But the truth is you're missing things, and the things you're missing is just going to cause you more problems. So having the trust of a caregiver that can just double check these things, or like with my wife, she'll spot things in me. She'll be like, you got to take some days off because you're getting ready to crash. You're getting ready to have some problems. And she's right every time.
And it sounds like me talking to my wife doing the same thing, where she'll leave the stove on every once in a while, or oops, I doubled up on all my meds today.
Yeah, yesterday I took Wednesday and Thursday's meds at the same time. And
I should have picked it up, because I'm sitting there waking up in the morning. I'm like, oh, fuck, is it Thursday? I look at her in the kitchen, give her a kiss, good morning, everything else. I'm like, yo, is it Thursday? She goes, no, you're a day ahead. Because I look at her pills, it messed me up.
And my PTSD obviously comes from EMS. And then, of course, I have the autoimmune thing. So, it is all basically a damage to the brain. And I think that even when you talk about normal PTSD, and you hate the word normal because nobody's PTSD is the same. I think that is another big myth that we have in this whole field, is that they blanket diagnose traumatic brain injury. They blanket diagnose toxicity. They blanket diagnose all this stuff. And then they want us, in order to give you more drugs, to say, oh, you're depressed. Well, yeah, if you can't remember to turn the darn stove off, if you can't remember what pill you're taking, if you've got a nightmare every night, no shit, you're depressed. I mean, that's
reality.
But there are true effects of the brain that fight or flight stays in hyperactive mode. And you don't realize that's what happens in even the most minor of traumatic brain injuries. So yeah, I relate. I don't remember to turn the stove off. I'm gonna burn the damn house down one day.
The interesting thing is, Boone, is that we both have PTSD. Mine's combat related, hers is, job related. So it's like we try to balance each other. So when I'm on a level playing field in my head, I can make sure her shit's straight, she's okay for the day. and then try to feed off of her because she's okay and straight, where I might be having a messed up date or one of those, and then we balance each other out. But when we butt heads,
It's like being in a blender.
no, it's like somebody shot a Scud missile in the damn house.
Well, let's all be really honest here. PTSD and PTSD can figure out a way to work together until you throw PMS in the middle, and then it's all fucked.
Oh no, she doesn't have that. I have PMS. I'm the one that gets PMS.
As long as I don't eat his M&Ms, we're all good.
Yeah, don't touch my chocolate.
Don't touch the chocolate. Gotcha.
And I think the other thing that is messed up in the whole system, and the sad part is that you can literally go on the VA's website and read their research. They are very transparent if you choose to dig. That's a big issue, is that they prescribe off label. They're using black box labeling to prescribe, and the care is not consistent across the board.
Oh no, it's not.
You know, when you go to certain places, that care is just not consistent across the board. And so we have a big issue. And we have to get that message out to these veterans that when you're finding that, we actually have a whole new thing, and this is probably off topic, but it's Project Your Voice.
Yeah.
We had over 200 letters sent from a simple statement, what's your opinion of the VA? And of those 200, they were all very negative. And in June or July, we are going to testify before Congress
So
and
we
take the stories. But we just got to get the message out to get the stories back.
Because we got together with Wounded
Because you
Warrior.
got to fix the problem.
Right. There's no uniformity. They're all individually funded, and there needs to be a uniformity. It doesn't matter whether, you know, like Damon over in Colorado is getting one form of care, which he should be getting the same damn care at the VA, versus, you know, here where we are in Southern Georgia, or in places where there's a high military retirement rate or a high military base. I mean, we got military bases out the ass here, so we're getting good people, but out where they live, they're
But
getting.
it even goes back to what Boone's talking about in his book, where like acupuncture therapy, we know that works for Lane.
Exactly.
Okay, but Lane goes to, and it is on the VA website that it is an approved treatment, that they will pay for it. Lane's fighting every day to get it paid. So there are multiple treatments that are out there. And I'm not going to pick on this person in particular or say anything about this person in particular, but he lives, not you, he lives in a state where medical marijuana is legal.
Yeah.
Right. So he's using marijuana and CBD to deal with the pain because he doesn't like the side effects of the drugs and all the drug pain. But then he goes to the hospital at the VA and he has a dirty P test, and now it is labeled in his record substance abuse. That's insane.
No, I had the same thing. I can't even go back to the Columbus, Ohio VA because of that reason.
So how do you stop this? I mean, I love the book and I love the resources, but not everybody has the money to fund alternative treatment. Does that make sense?
No, that's true, because you're coming out of pocket for it. You know, that's an issue. You know, it's an issue. When I had the radio show years ago, I would have people come on the radio show and they're like, "Hey, Boone, I want to give you this free treatment. I want to give you this free treatment." And I would always say, no, you know, it's not, I don't want the free treatment, because I want to know exactly what my community is going through when they don't have access to this stuff. Otherwise, how can I be an advocate if I'm not going through the same thing everybody else is going through?
Right.
So that was an issue. Then I got to, you know, my heart gave out, and then it was like, hey, you either accept some help or you're going to die. And I accepted the help and stayed alive. And that's, you know, thanks to Mama Lutz. She was the one that, her and Steve Daniluk from Warfighter Hemp, they were the two that stepped up and said, hey, we're going to cover the cost on this thing. And here's the side of that. So then I got to go through that, and I got to see how it did heal my heart. And I got to see how it did have different effects on my brain, you know, my cognition, my cognition and cognitivity is just better. My memory still sucks. I mean, that's an issue. But the thing is, now I know how bad my memory is, where before I couldn't tell because because of the cognition issues. So that's better. And I think that can be better yet again. I think once you start stacking things like I'll give you a perfect example. Anybody on this call right now who was medically retired from the military and has TRICARE and was discharged with a diagnosis of traumatic brain injury, everyone here has a human growth hormone that is absolutely 100% covered by the VA. I pay $10. I take human growth hormone every day. Human growth hormone stimulates the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland takes care of all the other glands and stuff inside the brain. So when you fix that and you pump that up, everything else is just better. So now we're dealing with a brain injury. We're not just trying to change my behaviors through some chemical process. We're actually healing the brain. And that has made a huge difference. Now, I don't know what HGH would be like without stem cells because I had both, but it's my inclination to say that I saw it happening in levels. Like it got to a certain level after stem cells, and then it went to a whole other level after the human growth hormone. And so, and it's called Nortotropin. It comes in a little EpiPen. You just dial it up, stick on a little tiny thing, and hit yourself in the belly every day. And I encourage everybody to write that name down. Nortotropin. It's in the book, but Nortotropin is the name of the drug, and it's human growth hormone. It is 100% covered for brain damage if you have TRICARE. Do I think the VA is just going to start popping up and giving everybody growth hormone? Probably not. At least not right away. But it's something that, as a group, I think these are the things that groups can change. But as far as if you have TRICARE, you just need to find the doctor and show them and have them write you a prescription. You know, I take 2 IUs a day, and it works.
If I had to work my prostate, it wouldn't be such an asshole.
No. Yeah, and one of the other things is that the medication that was used, and this is what Robin says. And Robin, you can unmute and talk about it if you want, but one of the things she's talking about specifically is the medicine that was given for treatment of malaria. That has become, you can develop poisoning from that.
Very familiar with methylquin toxicity. Methylquin toxicity, Bill Manofsky, you know, I know him, Dr. Nevin, both the guys, probably the foremost authorities on that. Yeah, you got methylquin toxicity, which is basically a chemical version of PTSD and TBI. It creates lesions on the brain that you can't see until you get an autopsy. So yes, that's an issue. Anybody who took methylquin could have an issue. You know, it depends on how toxic they were, and that depends on that. But then you throw burn pits on top of it. You know, the toxic exposures. Toxic exposures again is just another form of brain damage. So until we're dealing with the brain damage and stop giving everybody psych meds to shut them up or kill themselves, we're not making any progress. We're not doing anything good. That's my opinion.
Honest question is, what do you believe would be the most beneficial for our warfighter community and caregivers at this point?
Get on the same sheet of music.
Amen.
I think that's the most important thing we can do. And if it's through my book, that's great. At least we're on the same sheet of music. You know, one of the things that I've gotten a lot of feedback on the book is when spouses read the book, they go, okay, I understand a little better now. Or, you know, when warfighters read the book, they go, hey, I gave it to my spouse so we can understand a little better now. And that's part of the thing. First, we got to get on the same sheet of music within our own house. And then outside the house, we got to get our houses on the same sheet of music and start working from there. But if we don't start talking honestly about certain things that work, you know, and phobias and stigmas be damned, you know, we can't be playing that game. We got to be realistic about stuff. I think that's the first thing we need to do is get on the same sheet of music about what works.
Yeah, one of the advantages that we have is that through the project Your Voice, and we can talk about this offline later, but we have an independent research team that actually done through universities. And this woman's spouse is a veteran, and her grad students are pulling all the way.
I can't hear you. Somebody else is talking over you.
Angela, will you mute yourself for just a sec, babe? What's happening is that we have a grad student, independent researchers who are going to pull all of our data, and they will do any research project we need, veteran community wise. But in Project Your Voice, they are pulling all of our data. So when we realize that this is how we all get on the same sheet of music, we already have the independent research team who will pull any piece of data we want. And as we get together, maybe that's something you and I can talk about and bring other people in as we go. But I think you're right. We have all these caregivers who don't understand. We have a lot of warfighters who don't understand. And it's just going to take a lot of people getting out and having a conversation. We've made the biggest difference in some of our spouses come back to us and say, we're fighting for our marriage now. We were going to walk out the door, but we're fighting for our marriage now because you taught me to look at it on both sides. And I think that's important. I mean, we don't see it from your perspective and you don't see it from ours, but we have to remember we're partners in this. And my medical issues, Carl takes care of me every day. Thank God. Otherwise, I'd be horrible.
Well, we do end up taking care of each other regardless of how better one person is, mentally, physically, spiritually than the other person, because it is a yin and yang effect. And there is such a thing as caregiver burnout. It does happen. And then what do you do? How do you got to be able to prevent those things, or at least mitigate it? Because once the caregiver gets burnt out, then the depression sets in, the agoraphobia sets in. They're in the same boat as the veteran. And now that warfighter doesn't have the care. And then the agitation starts, more problems start. And now more problems start, and it starts being focused on the person that's burnt out. And then all of a sudden your marriage, it snowballs, and then your marriage goes to shit. So it's important, I think, to be able to focus on, again, getting on the same sheet of music with an element of empathy. I don't think any of us want to be this way. We don't want to be this way. We don't want to have brain damage. We don't want to have PTSD. It's not an issue. We just don't want it. But sometimes people look at us like it's our fault, like we want it, like we're making this happen and stuff, and it's not. I mean, there are serious physiological things that occur when you have traumatic brain injury, PTSD, and you're dealing with the toxicity, and whether it's mefloquine or it's heavy metals. All these things have a tremendous factor. Then you throw insomnia on top of it. Every one of these things that I told you about has a list this long of how it affects a human being. It's not just like, and this is one of the things that really makes me mad above a lot of things, is you get on the military and they go, hey, you have traumatic brain injury. What the fuck does that mean? I have traumatic brain injury.
They don't answer you, and they just say, have a good life.
Yeah, they never tell you what it results in. My traumatic brain injury resulted in Parkinson's and in central sleep apnea. So nobody, this is one of the other things that we can really do right away, is tell people, if you have traumatic brain injury, you need to determine what it results in, or what can it result in. Is it going to be dementia, which is a lot? Is it going to be Parkinson's, which is a lot? Is it going to be central sleep apnea? Yes, everybody who has brain damage has central sleep apnea, and pretty soon you're going to have a heart condition or a stroke if you don't get a sleep study and get on a CPAP. That's a fact. There's no way around it. And so it's that right there is, as an education piece, whether it's, whatever form of brain damage the person has, if you're not taking care of that and understanding that you have something has resulted in your traumatic brain injury, something has developed, and start dealing with the thing that you've developed, again, you're running uphill in the dark again, and not knowing why, not knowing how, and not knowing, what the remedy is. So, back to that question before, what's the most important thing we can do? Get on the same sheet of music and understand that traumatic brain injury results in something. It's just not a thing like a cold, it results in other conditions. And you need to be aware of what the signs and symptoms of those conditions are. Otherwise, you're going to fucking die. That's all there is. So you're going to fucking die, and it's going to be goddamn painful, and your family's going to watch you do it, and there's not going to be shit you can do about it. That's the one thing that really was probably the most disheartening thing for me when I was dying of a heart condition. I was like, how did I miss this? How did I miss this? How was this missed? And now I have to die because of a mistake. I have to die. It was hard. It was very, very difficult. And I had to watch my family suffer, and I could do nothing. I could do nothing to help them because I could do nothing to help myself. So you don't want to be in that situation. If you're dealing with, this is my mantra, if you're dealing with traumatic brain injury, the best first thing you can do is get a sleep study.
Yeah, because the bottom line is you truly only die from hypoxia. I mean, and people think I'm crazy when I say that, but, you know, if you're not getting oxygen to your brain, if your heart's not pumping, if you've got poisons in your blood, all that affects what carries the thing. And I relate a lot to the concept of how do you miss this? I'm a paramedic. I was in the medical field forever. And we take all of our side effects of everything that goes on, like exhaustion and confusion and anger, and we say, oh, well, the VA said I have PTSD. Or in my case, it was I'd overworked or whatever. And then when you really figure it out, you realize that there is something way bigger going on that takes one blood test somewhere down the road or one test somewhere, and it's roulette as to when you get it. And in my case, I worked in it, and it took me forever before I realized where it was. And that's a whole nother, I might get into that personal journey, but I relate to, and I think that's why I relate to the PTSD side and the TBI side and all these treatments. And you know, we've pushed at looking at what works and trying to look at each step, because it does affect you, everything you do. You know, John's talking about the Paxil and the other stuff. They make you gain weight. Then it creates depression. Then you've got strain on your heart that's already screwed up because you're not sleeping at night because of sleep apnea, which is struggling more. And then where do you end up? Just like you.
Yeah, and then you have all these questions like, how did this happen? Well, it's nice to know how it happened, but it's a lot better to know when it's happening so you can prevent other issues. I can't stress enough. You know, I was relegated to a wheelchair. I couldn't walk anymore. Well, my wife had to push me around. She had to drive the car. I couldn't drive a car. You know, these are very humbling things to have to go through. And guys out there who are like, oh, I could never sleep with that thing on my face. Shut the fuck up. Yes, you can. Okay, you can find a way if you want to sleep with that thing on your face. It's not the hardest thing in the world. But what is the hardest thing in the world is your heart giving out or having a stroke. You know, that's not comfortable. So, you know, you'll figure out how to sleep with that thing on your face. It's not that big a deal.
Sleep
It's
with
just
bullets flying around. I think we can sleep in CPAP.
yeah, I think anybody.
You can sleep with the CPAP.
Amen. And you know, it only takes, yeah, it's going to take a couple weeks to get used to, but you know, you've gotten used to harder things. You know, don't be a bitch. Just fucking wear the goddamn machine.
It's like listening to Jeremy.
Hey,
I think
I resemble that remark.
I know Roxy.
Wait till
I
you get
know
your Darth
Roxy
Vader
has a
mask for
question.
Christmas.
Roxy, what's your question, dear? Because I know Roxy.
But we need to make a shirt that says "Don't be a bitch" and wear the machine.
Roxy's question.
I might do that.
I'd wear it.
Hey, Boone, this is Roxy. I just have
Hi.
a question for you. What
Sure.
is your experience or what have you heard about hyperbaric treatment for PTSD and TBI?
I did hyperbaric oxygen. I did about, I want to say 80 dives before I went to Panama for the stem cell therapy. And just let me cover this real quick. I had to go to Panama for the stem cell therapy because they don't do the same type of therapy in the United States. It was all derived from an umbilical cord. No embryos were injured during my treatment. But the United States has not allowed the same type of treatment that they can do down in Panama. So I had to go to Panama. It took me a couple months to get there just because of scheduling the appointment. It takes a couple months to get down there. It's a small place and they can only get so many people in. So I was doing hyperbaric oxygen at that time just to try and get some oxygen to my organs because my heart was having trouble. I had cardiomyopathy and heart failure, polycythemia. These are all very fancy ways of saying I was in the death spiral. I couldn't get out of it. And so I was doing hyperbaric oxygen. It's hard for me to evaluate the value of hyperbaric oxygen as I went through it because I was just in such bad shape. It was hard to, you know, being alive that day. Yeah, being alive that day was a plus, you know, and I really do. I think that was one of the most important things that helped me stay alive until I could get the hyperbaric, until I could get to the stem cell therapy. But I I mean, my friend Steve Daniluk, he's done the hyperbaric H-bot for PTSD TBI. He swears by it. Other people,
So-
go ahead.
All right, so I understand that there's a portable type one that you can have in your house where you can ask your doctor to write a prescription for it. Do you know if TRICARE or the VA will pay for anything like that? Have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything, and I would be skeptical of that machine. I know that when I was going through the process, we had the discussion about being in a hardened machine and a non-hardened machine, and it was questionable whether or not the non-hardened machine was effective because it has to get up to certain pressures, and it wasn't that machine doesn't get up to the right necessary pressures.
Okay.
So just be cautious of that. I can't speak for or against those. I can just tell you what I was told. And that's what I was told. As far as the VA covering that, I don't believe they are covering HBOT. But our mighty warriors, it's who is it? What's her name? Mama Lee. She's the one that runs that. She's the Gold Star mom of Mark Lee, the first SEAL killed in combat. Mama Lee, she has an organization that helps with hyperbaric oxygen nationwide.
Oh, okay.
And Roxy, Aaron, if you get with Aaron afterwards, message Aaron, you and Aaron are friends. Aaron, you've had experience with this, right?
Yes, I
Okay.
have. My husband did it, and I'll leave you my phone number in the deal. Feel free to text me, and I can call you and go over what he did. But it
Okay.
was really beneficial for him.
Okay, so I'm on a new
I've-
system right now. So how will I be able to get the information?
I'll print it. I'll save the chat. I'll get it for
Okay.
you.
Okay, all right, thank
Well,
you.
Stacy has it too.
I have it too.
Okay,
That's dumb.
We got your 6, Roxy, no
All right.
worries.
what?
We got your 6, Roxy, no worries.
I appreciate the questions. If
Thank you.
people have questions, please say something. Let me have the opportunity to field your question. That's not a problem for me at all.
You want to talk about cannabis, Boone?
I love to talk about cannabis. No,
Oh, this conversation just got real.
yeah, cannabis.
I found it to be part of the trifecta. I call it the trifecta with my husband, with hyperbaric oxygen, ketamine infusions, and medical marijuana.
That sounds
what
pretty
we-
good right there. That sounds pretty good
Well,
right there. Yeah,
Okay,
my
so-
experience with. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll listen.
All right, so educate me a little bit, ketamine. I know that's probably a psych med.
No.
I'll talk to
So-
you about it later.
We'll
let
talk
Boone
to you about it later.
cannabis
Okay.
first. Yeah.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
With the cannabis, what I did, the first thing I used was just regular old smokable weed. I had not done that before. It wasn't something that I was even open to. I just was like, hey, I'm not that guy. I'm not a stoner. I'm not a pothead. I thought it was a negative thing until I did 17 days in a lockdown unit, and I came off all the drugs, and except for the painkillers. I just could not shake the painkillers at that time. But I came off the psych meds. I came off the Ambien, and I was back to insomnia. It was 3-4 days I hadn't slept, and that just goes all bad. Any human being that's gone 4 days with no sleep at all, you're pretty much fucking crazy. And that was my situation. And I was at work, and this young kid says, "You look like hell." And I said, "Yeah, I can't sleep." And he says, "Why don't you just smoke weed?" And I was like, "Get the fuck away from me. I don't smoke weed." And that night I was laying in bed. This was day 2. I hadn't had any sleep, and I didn't sleep again. And I thought to myself, what have I not tried? I've done everything the VA has. I've done everything military medical has. Done everything TRICARE suggest. I mean, literally, I've done everything every doctor suggested, and we're going on, 5 years at that point that I'd been going through this process. Nothing was working, and so I said, "Fuck it, I'll try cannabis." And the next day, I got a little bit of cannabis, and I smoked it that night, and I slept for 5 hours, slept like a baby, and I couldn't believe it. I thought it was an anomaly. There's no way it's just this simple. And so the next night I did it again. I slept for 5 hours. I hadn't slept for 5 hours in about 5 years. So that was a huge, that was the thing that really got me jump started into actually getting better, was to be able to get good sleep. And anybody who uses the indica strain of cannabis, of marijuana, I think you understand that you can get good sleep.
Yeah, but that's only the indica strain, not the sativa. That's the
Yeah,
kicker.
the sativa is a little bit different because it the sativa, you're going to get a little creative. You want to write, you might want to talk and eat a whole lot. But if you trust me, if you smoke enough sativa, you'll go to sleep too. But indica is definitely the choice strain for that.
But that's the best part of with weed is the tetrahydrocannabinol and how it affects the brain stem. And
Yeah,
it creates those blockers.
Well, the beautiful thing about it is you can't obsess about anything. I mean, they say that the side effect of cannabis is you're forgetful. Well, that's really nice. You want to be forgetful when you lay down at night, and you used to having nightmares and intrusive thoughts and things like that. If you have a nightmare on weed, you're like, wow, that sucked, and you go right back to sleep. Otherwise, you're up all night, your adrenaline is kicking, you get agitated, and you can't get sleep. So they call it a side effect. I call it a benefit. When the tetrahydrocannabinol 9, the Delta 9, they're coming out with Delta 8. Delta 8's already here. That's federally legal everywhere.
Yeah.
And also smokable hemp, which you guys will be able to buy from me very shortly. And that's legal in, I think, all but about 4 states. They don't allow smokable hemp.
There's only 4 states, and I believe Georgia's one of them.
Yeah, and it's federally legal, and it works really well. Smokable hemp is like a glass of wine and a muscle relaxer. Delta 8 is like 3 glasses of wine and a muscle relaxer.
So all it's going to do is park your butt in the stove and stare at the refrigerator to figure out what you want.
Yeah,
which is better than having sleep and rehashing everything that we had to do.
Or if you're just getting funky, I mean, if you're in the middle of the funky funk and you're probably making the wrong decisions, or you're reaching for the bottle and you're going to tie one on and it's probably going to result in needing bail money, don't do that. Reach for the weed. If you're feeling suicidal, don't do that. Reach for the weed. I mean, Spartan Pledge, all relative. But I've had guys tell me, dude, I want to kill myself. I said, are you smoking weed? And they said, no. I said, okay, go try and kill yourself with marijuana. Call me in the morning. Because you can't do it. After 2, I mean, literally, it takes away suicidal ideation in about 5 seconds.
Yeah, I believe the technical term is called derp.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is that, again, she wrote the thing about this week. The other thing that I find is that it is so looked down upon, and it's again, we have so much social stigma that we all face, that veterans with PTSD face that social stigma, TBI, they're supposed to be these superhero kind of guys, and now they're doing the John Rambo thing. And we deal with that social stigma because nobody wants to associate that what's really going on in their head is not mental. It is a physical change that has happened as a result of. And the smoking weed, my mom calls and she's like, Stacey, I'm using CBD. Well, with what I've got going on, I use CBD and I smoke pot. My mom's like, well, you don't need to be smoking pot. And I'm like, what the hell is that, Mom? But it's the mental concept that I think is a stigma that you still have to face. And for anybody who has not watched Unprescribed, that is an amazing film.
It is. Watch it.
Oh, I'm glad you've seen it. I'm glad you've seen it. That was a labor of love, with some really good people that have been through some shit, and the same people, the 3 primary, I guess, characters in that show, myself, Josh Frey, and Janine Lutz. And we went. Yeah, we went and stood before members of Congress to testify on behalf of the American Legion to try and get the laws changed for cannabis. And by and large, the vast majority, we're talking 90% of veterans are like, no, we want cannabis. We want cannabis to be available, and we don't want to be penalized for it. So, I mean, I think there is a stigma about the stigma at this point, because I don't think the stigma is there. I think the stigma is the worry of a stigma. but the stigma itself, I mean, when you have a desired rate of greater than 90%, that's not, there's no stigma there. That's beyond the stigma. So active duty, I agree. You know, active duty, you know, here's what you have to be concerned about with the marijuana. I'll tell you a quick story. I was thrown out of the Faith and Freedom Conference a few years ago in DC because there was a guy talking about, he was like, oh, cannabis is this and that. He was all negative and how it's wrecking America. And then he was trying to say there's no medical science that says it helps PTSD. And that's when I lost my shit. But he kept saying it makes you lazy, and I was like, no, it doesn't make you lazy. Well, it does. When you're smoking it, you're lazy, but you're also, when you're not smoking it, you're more effective, less lazy, because you are more mobile. You have your faculties together. You could think. You're not all stressed out. You don't have the anxiety. So, you know, lazy is relative. Yeah, you're lazy when you're using it, but you use it when you need it. You know, if you're using it when you don't need it, then you're lazy all the fucking time. That is true. So, you know, there is a very, you know, you have to be sensible about it. Why are you using it? If you just want to stay baked all the time, well, I don't think that's, you know, it's probably safer, but I don't think it's any more healthy than walking around and you know, being in constant anxiety. I don't think it's any more healthy. It's safer, but it's not any more healthy.
Donna, you got something you want to say? Because you over there just nodding your head like the little Weevil doll.
No, I mean, we talked with Boone about this on our episode that we did with him, because all of us at Behind the Service, we all fully support medical cannabis, any type of cannabinoid for TBI, PTSD, anything like that, because it really does. It helps tone you down, or it helps be able to get you through those moments where you normally physically can't do so. But being able to have, it's not just a placebo effect, and it doesn't just make, oh goodness, sorry, it doesn't just make you munchy, and it doesn't make you angry. Like whiskey does not affect my husband the same way that medical cannabis does, because he's one person with one of them and he's completely different with the other. He's sitting right here. But yeah, there he is. He doesn't want his face on here today. But I mean, we have talked extensively with the DoD neuroscientists. We've interviewed some of them. We've talked with different people at the VA about why they haven't allowed cannabis to be allowed for our veteran population. And Justin's primary care provider in San Antonio, Texas, not in Seattle, Washington, where it's legal, not in Montana, where it's medically legal. In Texas, he was like, look, I cannot prescribe you the medications because cannabis is already taking care of those issues for you. He's like, it would be redundant, and it's just extra chemicals in your body that you literally don't need. So it's like Mama Let's, her son was on 14 to 24 different prescription medications at one time. Whereas my husband, he takes ibuprofen every once in a while because of his back injury.
Right. Now, cannabis is wonderful, and I don't know why anybody would have a problem going to sleep stress-free and pain-free every night. And they treat, if that's the devil's lettuce, make me a fucking salad.
All right, Stephanie, do you want to unmute yourself and ask that question, love? Because Stephanie has a question about.
Yeah, I was just wondering, so my husband's a cop and obviously can't smoke weed as much as I'm sure he'd like to. So
I'm pretty sure he
well, let's not go there, but we only have a few more months before he's done, so we just need to ride it out. But can he do like a CBD oil that does not have THC? Do you know if it would have the same effects as if he was just lighting up a joint?
CBD works fantastic a lot of the time. It really does. It works fantastic. It can easily replace, you know, having THC, having high THC. For a lot of people, this is absolutely true. Some people can just use CBD and go straight to sleep. I can't use CBD and go to sleep. It doesn't. I need the effect. I need the psychotropic effect of THC. Some people don't. So it really comes down to the individual person. But I will tell you that there are a lot of people that pop hot on piss tests just with CBD. So it depends on what they're testing for. If they're testing for cannabinoids as opposed to just THC, well, you're going to pop hot. If they're testing for THC, well, the cannabinoids from may pop the THC. You know, I don't know how that works, but I know when I was one of the owners of Warfighter Hemp, we would get guys in the military who were saying, "Hey, I use the THC free CBD, and I popped hot on a piss test." And you know, we did what we could to help them, but you know, it's a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot. I hope this will change soon. You know, as far as you know, what different people can use. A few years ago, I was doing law enforcement training. Warfighter de-escalation tactics is what I was doing, and we trained 1,000 police agencies across the country. And what was really amazing, aside from they were very interested in the training, they were very thankful, is that every event we went to, it didn't matter if it was California, Texas, Nevada, Washington, it did not matter where I was at. I could be sitting in the elevator and some dude would literally jump through the elevator right before it closed. And it was one of the officers who was like, "Hey man, that PTSD shit you're talking about, I got to talk to you. I got to get this off my chest right now." I mean, these guys were truly suffering. And, you know, I mean, they would catch me in hallways, stairwells, you know, trying to eat, be like, "Hey man, can I talk to you for a minute?" You know, and they were just dying to get this taken care of and to find some sort, they were really suffering. And I heard some really rough stories. I mean, guys, you know, watching babies burn to death in car seats, you know, because they couldn't get them out of the car, you know, things like this, just really just heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching stuff. And I get it. I totally get it. And they don't have access to something that can make them better. You know, there's a couple different things I notice when people have PTSD and they don't have access to cannabis. I notice a lot of alcoholism for one thing, a lot of alcoholism.
Yeah.
And the other thing I notice a lot of is divorce. So I don't see that with cannabis. I don't see the things that come with the abuse of alcohol just do not follow the use of cannabis. And I don't see, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been in front of people talking about cannabis, and then I'll step off the stage and people are pulling on my coattails going, "Hey, saved our marriage. Keep talking about it. Hey, saved our marriage. Keep talking about it." And they're just like, "I can't talk about it, but just so you know, you're doing the right thing because it saved our marriage." So, and I hear that a lot, and I would be a lying fool if I didn't say marijuana has definitely helped out my wife and I through some rough times. And we're here and everything was fine. Nobody had it just wasn't bad. We tried to, if the same thing was tried with alcohol, I assure you we would not be together.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. Totally agree. I guess we just need to start smoking some weed.
I got some. It's still
I'm
not
pretty
legal
sure
in
my-
Georgia.
Do not
Yeah,
post
well,
that.
my federal job's not gonna allow that here, but
For those who don't like to the high feeling but need THC, you can actually get it. I have not personally tried it, but I've heard that the THC in it is actually really, really healing, and I guess isn't psychoactive because it's not heated. So you might look into juicing. You do have to grow it your own if you do it that way, because you got to have fresh leaves and fresh flowers. But I've heard really good things about autoimmune and just inflammation overall. So
Oh yeah, if you're not using Rick Simpson oil for about 30 days twice a year,
yes.
if you have access to that or you can make it yourself, I think it's sold brand name. I think they're selling under the name Phoenix Tears now. But
it depends on the state. But it's it's
Rick
great.
Simpson. Rick
How would you
Simpson
grow it
oil
in a
is
state that doesn't allow it? Because then you're winding up, you know, either breaking the law that way, and they come and raid you because you're growing, you know, without a license.
You know, this is a good question, and I'm not going to tell you to do shit illegal, but I did, and I'm not sorry for it, because I had my brain, and I
have a greenhouse secured and locked.
We're going to visit.
I
John.
mean, I just think you got to do what you got to do, man. I even put it in the book, you know, before it was legal in Nevada. You know, I was meeting the guy down at Del Taco and scoring my weed, you know, once a week. But and I wasn't sorry for it because
I miss Del Taco.
functioning better. Yeah, I was functioning better. And I don't know what kind of price you put on that. I don't think anybody wants to give up their freedom, but at the same time, most state laws, even if you have possession, they're misdemeanors. And who the fuck cares? I mean, line them up. If it's going to keep me alive, I'll take your misdemeanor, pay your fine. What is that, $300? All right, fuck off, whatever.
Well, and two, then when you tell me you have a medical condition, if they put you in jail, they're responsible for all your medical bills. So once you just go flash around that you got a medical condition, problem solved. I mean, we find that in Georgia. It's weird because, we do so much of this, and I can't tell you how much that, even as a first responder who has my own version of PTSD, and I have an exuberant amount of autoimmune disorders. In fact, I absolutely cannot wait. I'm sending an email out to Jeff like tomorrow, because I want to hear about the holistic body treatment, because all of a sudden I just ended up with everything. And I'm sure it's just from my experiences and the stuff I've been around for 20 years. I was a firefighter. I lived on the military bases with the whole poisoning of the water system. Been there, done that, got the whole thing. But I think that this book was so eye-opening that it is so individual. And I think that is the part that truly inspired me about this book and you sharing your story, is that it is individual. We tend to just give this one diagnosis, this one treatment fits all, this one everything. And this has got to be a personal choice and an independent choice and a unique choice that you've got to want to get better, and you've got to do what it takes. And your partner, your spouse, whoever you're with, has got to be supportive and walk through that journey with you. And it takes all of that, and it takes a community. We're so afraid to come together. And I think that's the thing that I love, Aaron and Libby and Shauna. We all do this, but we are never in competition with each other, because our thing is spread the message, spread the message, spread the message. We're not
ethos before ego. As long as you're putting your ethos before ego and coalescing as a group, we're doing the right thing.
And that's where we have to be. And, for you to take time out for us, you just don't know how much that means. And I really can't wait for Mama Lex's book to get here tomorrow, because that woman is a true inspiration. And if you've not read her story and don't know her story, I don't understand how you can lose 2 children to suicide the way she did and come out as the biggest advocate for warfighters and ending this. And she's spread it to the EMS and first responder world, because we see some horrible stuff. I never realized until we sat with Jeremy and Carl one night that I went through this, from watching the person burn the car that I can't get out. We don't realize how that works. But any woman who can do what that woman has done is amazing. And she is our biggest voice.
Mouse ate a frog.
Well, guys, on that note, I've got to get out of here. I got to get on to my next gig, but I really appreciate being here, and I'll join you again. Think about your questions, think about stuff you want to ask, and I'll come back on next week. I think I'm clear on Thursday, if you're doing it on Thursday.
Always.
And
Thursday.
Every Thursday. Okay. I'm gonna log it down on my calendar, make sure I got that open, and then let's have some more conversation. I'm happy to be a part of it. I think it's great that you guys you've done that. You've coalesced a group, and that's amazing that cares about the same thing. So by all means, invite more people. I'll be here next Thursday, at least for the first hour, and we'll keep it rocking.
Absolutely.
I just appreciate you taking the time, brother.
Thank you.
brother.
Yeah, but
Thank you
next
so
week
much,
we
sir.
need to really talk about your Spartan pledge, because I think that's instrumental too.
Oh, it's huge.
It's the thing that makes the difference. But absolutely happy to talk about it whenever, wherever, to whomever is in front of me. Happy to do it.
Thank
Right on,
you,
Rob.
dear. Bye, Boone.
Thanks, guys. God bless you. Take care now.
You
Bless
too.
you.
Oh.
There, no.